support, the real value, I think, in setting these, when you set a snare, one of the rules of thumb you want to have happen is, and this is just important because closing time is actually quite important for a snare. From how it's sitting, from how it's sitting to if it were to just turn, it needs to free fall down. If it's not doing that, there's a problem. And any resistance in there is something they can feel on their throat as well. All right? So you want to really make sure that you have got good action on your snare. Now, if we can accept that as just fact, you need a fast closing snare. If it doesn't close quickly, you have problems. We can all accept that to be true. One of the big issues when you are then setting a snare is trying to keep the loop the size where you want it and not fart around with it 10 times when you're getting all your things set up in place. That's the real value of 9-wire, apart from placement on the neck, which it does the best job of any method we have so far. When I'm standing here getting my cable ready, I look where I want my loop size right there. I just mark that with my collar support. It can fall, do whatever it wants to do. I have that point marked. I can mess around with the rest, everything quickly. I just come up to my cable and just pull it up and butt it up. I don't need to think about what's going on. I know it's the loop size I want. Does that make sense? So it streamlines it out. Now, this is, I'll just close it.
So that's why you start off with 5-foot piece then.
Precisely. So I'm just going to close this up now. Again, these really only have one way they go on. And now we can see, if that's all sit true. So cable has a memory. It comes in a roll. It comes in a circle. When you run breakaways, when you run these cams, this isn't fixed cable. It's loose through there. That allows it to rotate on itself and find its natural, preferred, relaxed position. If you don't run this gear, you have to do that when you grip it, and it makes this job suddenly tedious and meticulous because you have to have that cable perfect or it always will do this on you, and you're spending more time thinking around with it. Time on site when it comes to wolves, period, matters. That's just a fact of life when it comes to wolves. So the more you can do to have this stuff working for you, the better. All right? The other really big benefit to this collar sport and the number 9-wire setup. So this 9-wire has nothing to do with the anchoring of the snare. I should just have an actual one on here. Our anchor is all cable end in, okay? This is strictly for holding the snare in place. The beautiful part is you really only need to do this work once. If it's an area you plan on trapping year after year, you put up your 9-wire once. You can do it with a drill where you core through a tree, put a bend, the tree will grow around it. If you're planning on keeping them there, I wouldn't twist them like this because you'll impact the tree's growth. What I would recommend is you just staple them on, put a bend. There's all kinds of different methods to getting these attached. It's quite simple. It's a bit of prep time, but it's just work you do once, and then that's just good forever now. And the tree will grow around it. Everything sits there nice and easy. So it streamlines work in the future of your production. But one of the most important parts in general is when they're caught in here, the first few seconds is really critical to the overall rate at which an animal's going to die. And the more they get to play with excess cable when they're closing, the more there's other things moving instead of the lock moving and closing around the neck. So if I'm pulling here, this is starting to move, but this is also moving instead of this. Right? The only thing we want moving is the lock to close around the neck quickly. So we want to work with less cable. Now the moment it's on the neck, We then want more cable to give it a bit of a run and snap. But until it's on there, less cable is better. Does that make sense to everybody, what I'm saying there? If they've got 20 feet of rope and this isn't tight, they've got to make it 20 feet before it starts to tighten. If there's only a foot, they only have to move their head and it's going to start tightening, right? But I actually want some leash once it's on there. That's where this collar support really does its job. And the difference now is when they're pulling, this isn't moving. The only thing moving is this, right? This is locked in place, it's friction fit. Now once it's set, and you'll see this moves a little bit to jam up there, but at that point it stops, and now we're only working with a 5-foot piece of cable that they have to pull free. And that's going to set it on the neck. Once they pop that free, now we're working with our anchor end. Now we've got increased length. They're going to have a feeling that something was on their neck. They're panicked. They pulled. They felt resistance. Then they felt it pop free. Like whatever had a hold doesn't have a good hold. And they can hopefully instigate a run. They might turn and bite, but typically you're going to get a bit of a run and a panic launch. That's where we want that extra yard for a big launch and snap to get it tight. That snap is when we want this stinger spring to go off. That big snap, everything's set in place. Now, that stinger spring is going to take that excess cable, suck it up. We've got killing pressure on the animal now. No matter what happens, twisting, twirling, laying down, wrapped up in a tree, whatever, the dying process has started. That's what this solidifies with this gear. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? When you're running this gear, this is a methodology based around precision, not just holding them no matter what. The older style, the 1/8 cable, that was an out of the style of just hold them there because you don't want to lose them. We've kind of just gone to the other end. We've toed the line and gone to the other end where we fully recognize that we will lose them if we don't kill them. Okay? We're just simply doing a way better job killing now. It's dropping them far quicker. And it is genuinely irrefutable. This is,
We have the science to prove
we
it
have
now.
the science to prove it. It's very much there, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
So you know, when you snare a wolf or whatever, you usually wrecks your snare.
Yes.
Okay, so, but you got a little tether piece here.
Yep.
So how come you haven't got some kind of quick way of taking that apart? So
Great question. Great question. I don't typically run that type of barrel swivel. Like Ken and I are both in argument right now with the idea about why we're still using it.
Not between you two.
No.
We don't run that
We're on
style
agreement.
specifically because of that reason. So I try to just be clear about that reality. I run this style here, okay? So this swivel here, this whole anchor is attached to a tree, never comes off. When I catch a wolf or whatever, I leave it on the neck and I cut it up here outside of the ferrule. So all the gear is attached to the animal, and then I can haul that all into the garage or in the skins, trim it all there, right? So I'm not losing any pieces in the field. Now at the end of that, what it looks like.
Where do you cut off?
Okay, I haven't got a
So
swivel.
where you would cut,
Yeah, there it is.
where you cut is right here. Okay, that's cut. That just pops off.
Oh,
And now I'm sitting with this anchor sitting like that, with this nice big open swivel. You just need the size is the big
so
thing.
you sacrifice the snare and then you
Your
get it.
snare is always better no matter what, every time. Just simply because it's like a ribbon for like a gift, like when you gift wrap and you run the scissors on the ribbon, same thing happens to the cable. So when we put that swivel in, the other thing it does, apart from being a swivel, often for only a few seconds, then it's wrapped up, it's no longer a swivel. But in that few seconds, it kept the twisting and that ribbon effect from traveling the full length of your cable and only limited it to the swivel. So the whole anchor end is reusable again. If you don't do that, if you don't incorporate a swivel, typically you're reusing the full cut of cable every time. So it's just going to save you cost. Okay? And potentially a chew out in the event that they're not wrapped up right away. You want that swivel working for you. Now, anyways, before we get ahead of ourselves, we've got our anchor on here, we've got our excess end. all you do is go over and through.
Oh,
So this is a lights out one, which is a little bit
because it has a
different.
bigger opening and
Yep.
you can
So
do
you
that.
just gotta get that gear through there, all fits through,
Oh, okay,
and now, pull that in,
that makes sense.
it weaves through itself, just like that. Now we've got a perfectly
Oh, yeah.
functioning, tool. If you are, if you're running into a situation where you are getting stuff around the legs or the bellies, then I would recommend this. Probably, you are doing more of a relaxed snare style. Probably, and this is a typical kind of older style, especially if you run them where you run the supports up off either end. This is your trail coming through here. You're probably running a bigger loop, more opened up with your anchor supports and a little bit lower to the ground. Now, when you walk away from this style set, often you're in the wheelhouse, but if you're on the bigger side and you get any kind of a snow dump and lift that up even an inch or two, the overall height of the trail, you're going to instigate that jump through. Now, this is why, and now for my style when I trap, I'm higher in my snares than most people I trap with. I set quite high. And I'm specifically getting them to lift that chin up on me, but it does take the extra second or two, and if you're not in good area, sometimes a few seconds. So I'm a bit higher, but I do like to have a little chin lift, something brushy, just to get that chin up into the snare. Now, when you're doing this, this needs to be extremely subtle, extremely subtle. The least you can do, the better. Or even better yet, if you can find a trail that naturally has some chin lifts on it, just set on that, and you don't need to do the fumbling around. But the only other possibility, really, I would say, if you're running into that situation, is potentially you're getting a lot of effect from the wind. And down south wind this is always a problem for us. The number 9 wire does help with the wind a bit as well. One of the tricky parts about wolves, well, with the regulations with foot holding, is you have to be around to check footholds, and that's hard for a lot of people to pull off. But the truth of the matter is, there's way more places where you can set with footholds than you can with snares. You're really limited in where you can work with snares. So if you've got them in the area and you can spend time out there, it really is worthwhile trying to play with footholds, even if you know you're pulling them in a couple days, just simply because you can play in those open ground areas where they're willing to be a little more curious, and you can get away with them kind of off guard.
Did you like this video? If you did, I think you're gonna like this one right over here. So check it out. And I appreciate your subscribing if you haven't done so already. Remember to do that while you're watching this next video. Click like, it all helps us out for this channel. Catch you next time.